This is the Ohio Farm Bureau podcast. I'm Ty Higgins. The end of a year typically is a chance for many to slow down a bit, but when it comes to policy, boy, it seems like we're getting buzzer beaters every single year, and the end of 2024 was no exception. Jack Irvin joins us on the podcast. He's Vice President of Public Policy for Ohio Farm Bureau. Many of those buzzer beaters at the end of 24 as far as policy, not just in Washington, D.C., but in Columbus, had a lot to do with agriculture.
Absolutely. It certainly was not a boring time.
One of the biggest things that actually got through before its expiration at the end of 2024 was the Farm Bill, something that is very, very important. Now, I have to emphasize, we didn't get a new 5-year Farm Bill. We got another extension, but still better than it not existing at all.
Yeah, certainly having at least a continuation is, at a bare minimum, was something that we were really pushing for. And coming down to, frankly, right before Christmas time, it still was not reauthorized for another year. So thankfully, to all the good work of so many of our members and so many of you across the state continuing to share your story and put in the word of why things like crop insurance and conservation programs, why those entities are important, they went ahead and proved that. And so we do have an extension here well into 2025, but still got a lot of work to do to get a new 5-year bill approved, and certainly at top of the agenda for this year.
And this Farm Bill was lumped into a continuing resolution that also included some disaster relief, not just for farmers here in Ohio, but for farmers across the country that saw a plethora of disasters in 2024. A lot of this stuff, Jack, though, I can't emphasize enough, almost didn't happen.
Yep.
There was a time there where agriculture and some of the things we worked so hard on over the last quarter of 2024 were simply going to be not a part of this CR that eventually we got back in there. Talk about some of that process and what we did as far as membership in an organization to make it happen.
Yeah, so looking back just a couple weeks ago, so at December 20th, the federal government was set to shut down if they didn't approve what's called a CR, a continuing resolution, which is a tool they use to continue the funding into the new year. And part of that conversation discussion was, should we have a Farm Bill extension? Should we have funding for disasters, not only specifically to just agriculture, but hurricanes and other issues we've seen across the country? And then recognize, frankly, there's been a pretty rocky road on the economic front. Should we have some additional economic assistance for farmers while we try to bridge that gap and work our way towards a new Farm Bill? Frankly, all that stuff kind of blew up at the last 24 hours when they were supposed to kind of finalize and approve a CR that week there in mid-December. We didn't give up. We kept moving forward. And to me, this, again, just speaks to the testament of you all and how much people care about farmers, how much people care about agriculture. So we had a 1,500-page bill, which was part of the CR, and any number of other topics and issues kind of all piled into this thing together, a big omnibus package. It all blew up at the last moment. Like, nope, we're just going to do a straight, clean CR, keep the government open until the spring, and deal with all these issues next year. Well, there was a lot of pressure to continue to look after the farmers. And so we saw Farm Bill extension added into that. We saw disaster assistance added into that. And we saw economic aid added into that for agriculture specifically. So we went from a bill that was 1,500 pages to a little over 100 pages. All that other stuff got thrown out. So really kind of 4 major components. Again, funding the federal government through the CR, Farm Bill extension, economic assistance, disaster assistance. So think about that. 3 of the 4 major components. Everything else got thrown away, was had agriculture's fingerprints all over it. And that's just an amazing testament to you all.
Yeah, thousands of letters written to congressmen and women in D.C. because of Farm Bureau's Action Alert, and that made a big difference. Now, the extension means that we're good, so to speak, with the Farm Bill until the end of September. But Jack, I think it's pretty clear that we need something sooner than later as far as a new 5-year Farm Bill. Lots changed since 2018, not just economically, but also with things that we've seen with input prices, a lot of other really complex issues in agriculture that the 2018 Farm Bill simply doesn't cover. So The work continues as we get into 2025 here, and looking for a new 5-year farm bill, as I mentioned, sooner than later.
Yeah, absolutely. You all don't run your businesses in short, couple months time period here or there. You're planning long term, and that is a big part of the reason why the farm bills are for every 5 years, to add a little bit of certainty, a little bit of clarity of what policy is going to be at the federal level. You all have so much unpredictability in your day to day, Mother Nature, markets, etc. Trying to have a set 5-year build, add a little bit of certainty in certain areas is something that we continually strive for.
So we had some of our contingency in Washington during this time. Brad Bales, our senior director of public policy at the state and federal level, was out there along with our president, Bill Patterson. And so that really, they got to see firsthand how Farm Bureau does their work in Washington. There was a lot of things happening right here in Columbus, Ohio, as well, as we wrapped up in the end of the year. And we mentioned some of that disaster relief at the federal level. Going to see some of that at the state level as well because of Ohio Farm Bureau's work.
Yep. So while our president and myself and my colleague Brad Bales were in D.C. kind of doing the people's work and trying to move things forward, our counterparts back home here, Evan Catlicote and Whitney Bowers, our state directors of policy, were down at the State House continuing to work in that area. And one major area the state was looking at was disaster assistance. So the state of Ohio did pass here at the end of lame duck $10 million. Still a little bit to be determined exactly how that's going to be allocated, but for the most part, looking at kind of those areas that were most directly hit from the drought, and certainly conversations that kind of focus on that livestock space, people hauling water, some of those type of issues that we continue to see, unfortunately, throughout the summer. So still more to be determined, but awesome that we were able to get that accomplished. A couple other quick tidbits and areas. Had worked closely with our partners in the commodity groups and agriculture community, particularly our friends at Ohio Pork, and look to make some restrictions on feral swine and how they are handled in Ohio. And got that bill passed. Obviously, biosecurity, protecting our herd from any number of foreign diseases is very important. And unfortunately, feral swine is a big concern and a big issue, and hinders some of that biosecurity. So that we are very thrilled to work and partner with Ohio Pork and others to get that accomplished. And then a totally different front on the educational front, career tech licensure to be specific. The state passed some legislation that makes it easier for people that are in certain career paths to come in and then work in the career tech space, in the education space. And we constantly are hearing the need for workforce development, giving people other opportunities in education, kind of outside that traditional 4-year, higher ed pathway, which we're not against. We're supportive of that too. But given our workforce more opportunities, we're thrilled about that passage as well.
Some big victories at the federal and state level to wrap up 2024, but now we look ahead to 2025, putting together our priority issues as we speak, and we'll have those featured later on the podcast here in the coming weeks. Jack Irvin, Vice President of Public Policy with Ohio Farm Bureau. Appreciate your time.
Glad to be here, Ty. Thank you.
Hey, this is Matt, Phil, and Libby, hosts of Ag Credit Set It, your go-to podcast for insights on farm finance and maximizing your return on investment.
Tune in to new episodes of Ag Credit Set It twice a month as we talk to industry leaders, financial experts, and farmers who share their experiences and perspective.
Listen in your favorite podcast app like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and be sure to subscribe to Ag Credit Set It so you never miss an episode. We'll talk to you soon.
As the nation's #1 insurer of farms and farm families, Nationwide has long been a reliable resource for rural America. And while the current surge of data, technology, and globalization promises incredible growth potential, each new opportunity is shadowed by rising threats like security breaches, GMO contamination, and supply chain failures. This business is about adapting. It demands a protector just as forward-minded. It demands Nationwide.
Welcome back to the Ohio Farm Bureau podcast. I'm Ty Higgins. Grain bins serve a critical role in agriculture, providing secure storage and protection for large quantities of grain before it's sold or processed. However, these structures also pose very serious and threatening dangers to workers if proper safety procedures aren't followed when working in or around them. To help prevent accidents, Nationwide and its partners provided life-saving grain rescue tubes and training to 58 fire departments across rural America through its grain bin safety campaign. To talk more about it, Laramie Sandquist, risk management leader for Nationwide Agribusiness. Laramie, always great to see you. Welcome back to the podcast.
Appreciate you having me, Ty.
Nationwide has been able to make quite an impact with this initiative, now going on, 12 years?
Yeah, we started this back in 2014. We're going on our 12th year this year. And over that time frame, we've had 390 different tubes we've been able to give out over 32 different states. Almost $2 million so far raised as part of this campaign over that last 11 years. And looking forward to a successful 2025 campaign as well.
I mentioned the fire departments that got some rescue tubes and training this year. 4 of them right here in Ohio: Tiffin, Grafton, Bowersville, and Rome. How are fire departments chosen to receive these grain rescue tubes?
Yeah, it started off early on as a pretty easy process. We didn't have a lot of tubes to be able to give out when this thing first started. But as you mentioned, we're up to 58 this year, and usually we're between 55 and 60 every year. So what we try to do is we start off obviously with those donated tubes that are to a specific fire department. So some folks want to donate one to a specific rural fire department, which we appreciate. But then we also look out for just the donated ones in general. We look across the grain belt area, and we look to see where tubes have been distributed in the past. And then we also look to see who's been nominated, obviously. It starts with those nominations, but then we also kind of look across to see, okay, are we getting the right spread? Are we making sure that we have tubes in the geographic areas that if we do have an incident, do we have something within a 30-mile radius? Do we have something within a 60-mile radius? So we're constantly looking at that to make sure that we have full coverage in the event of something bad happening up there.
Yeah, and it's an issue that's really not going away, but it seems like to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we're starting to hear more success stories and more people being rescued than the devastating outcomes that we've been used to over the past couple of decades.
Yeah, actually, we've seen just this year 6 saves of the 12 saves that we've seen overall, and I think a bigger piece of this is the awareness, right? We're getting a lot more awareness out there in the rural communities. Obviously, as you flood it with 390 different tubes across the 32 states, there are the resources out there that are available as well. So, we do hear about more incidents that are happening. Usually, we're seeing between 25 or 30 incidents a year. Unfortunately, we're still seeing about half or even a little more than half of those result in fatalities. But we are seeing more saves, and I think that's attributed to this campaign, to the training that we give to those rural fire departments, and just the education and the awareness that folks know about this in the rural communities so that these saves are available and we have the right and proper protocols in place. You think historically on something like this, you maybe had a small group of people that knew what to do in these situations. But through these awareness campaigns, I think we're getting the word out in the communities, and people are using the resources. I know we'll talk about that a little bit that we have available just to educate themselves in addition to educating those fire departments and the local authorities.
Yeah, the awareness about the tubes, about the training, definitely key, but really the prevention is necessary to make fewer and fewer of these instances happen across America. And we're coming upon Grain Bin Safety Week, which you guys are proud to put on every single year. What are some of the ways that you work around grain bin safety and help to educate our members and farmers all across the Midwest?
Yeah, it's a very interesting campaign. It really starts right now, right? It starts January 1st through the end of April, where we do the Nominate Your Fire Department contest. So that's where the campaign really starts. And then during the summer months, of course, we're out delivering tubes across the country. So that will start in earnest probably the end of April through, I think the last tube got delivered this year sometime in late October through the trainings and obviously the delivery of the tubes and things like that. So it is an all-out year-round effort that we put out there. But obviously the bigger piece of this is the Grain Bin Safety Week, as you mentioned. This year it's February 16th through the 22nd, always that third week in February. And we do a lot of stuff leading up to that week. Obviously, a lot of things going on that week itself between, social medias and podcasts like this and just awareness campaigns that we try to get out across the country. And then obviously, as you mentioned, a lot of the resources that are out there. We try to refresh our resources every year, making sure the content is out there. We have articles, we have videos, we have success stories, we have interviews. We have all of these things to hopefully help not only educate the first responders and also the local authorities, but as I talked about, to help educate the public on what are the best practices in working in and around these bins, and how do we educate ourselves and our community to make sure that everyone's working safely out there.
Saving lives is certainly recognition enough, and these fire departments and these sponsors certainly don't want the recognition. But you have found a special way to show your appreciation for what they're able to do to keep this program going and make it stronger and stronger every year.
Yeah, it's pretty well known in the hero community that challenge coins are well established throughout the military, throughout the first responder community, the police community, things like that. And what we thought would be a cool gift for all of the first responders, the fire departments, but also the sponsors of that tool would be to give a challenge coin out. So this year we actually went out across the country to those 12 different fire departments and the 12 sponsors of those tubes and gave them all a challenge coin that basically says 0 lives lost is our goal. And they had 1 life saved. So a cool recognition and just support of the continuing efforts of these rural fire departments, but also the sponsors who have supported this effort across the country, just to make it real and just to make sure people know that, hey, this is a big deal. This is something we really care about. This is something we want to continue to promote. And this is something that's near and dear to everyone's heart in the rural community. So appreciate all those efforts from everyone out there. And the challenge coin is, if that's what we can do to provide our appreciation, we will surely do that.
Someone listening or watching right now could make a big difference in their community by nominating their fire department in the 2025 contest through Nationwide. Tell us more about how to nominate a fire department and how our listeners and viewers can learn more.
Yeah, everything starts at grainbinsafetyweek.com. So we've got our own little website out there specifically for this. You can go out there and nominate a fire department. The price is still $6,000 per tube and training. So that kind of gives an idea where folks are. So far this year, we've already raised almost $200,000 this year through 23 different donations. So the average donation size is usually in between that $8,000 and $10,000 mark. So off to a nice fast start this year. Appreciate all the folks that are, there. We have some folks that are giving annually, right? They give us donations every year and just say, hey, we trust that you guys will use this in a safe and effective manner. We definitely appreciate the confidence that they have in us. But for those that really want to get involved, definitely start at grainbinsafetyweek.com. They can go out and nominate their own fire department and hopefully get more of these tubes out there across the country.
Great initiative, saving lives all across the Corn Belt and beyond. Laramie Sandquist, Risk Management Leader for Nationwide Agribusiness. Always great to see you, and thanks for your time.
Thanks a lot, Ty.
Find previous podcasts at ohiofarmbureau.org and search podcast.